I thought that I was losing my mind. I couldn't figure out, why I really thought I had Lyme disease. I was so convinced of it because the symptoms are about the same. That with what my conditions were from the allergy, my symptoms were a little different than theirs, but everybody's has a little bit of a different reaction. I really was convinced I had Lyme disease and just kept on being diligent about getting blood work done every 6 months to see if I had Lyme disease. And finally, I realized that, this is actually happening every time I eat beef. And then everything started coming into play with that. And then I had to convince doctors that I actually wasn't losing my mind. And they didn't, believe a word I said until I finally had the blood work done just 6 months ago. And
So
finally,
6 months ago
yes,
that you finally had a positive
yes,
diagnosis for what it was specifically.
exactly. Because
Unbelievable.
I was being told by my allergist that basically there was no way of getting a lab to do the work. There was no lab around here that could perform the stuff that I wanted to have done. And they just looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language, basically. They weren't informed about it. They didn't really take the initiative upon themselves to get to know about it. They have since then, but they didn't have a clue what I was even talking about. I was bitten back in 6 or 7. Yeah, I got
Do
bit
you
by a
remember the
tick.
tick?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
remember what it looked
Some
like because
people
I
don't
took it.
even remember
No, I
that.
took it and put it in a jar because I thought it was different looking, and at first I thought it was kind of like a weird ladybug, but a tick is a tick, and you know, I'm not in the yard or out in the in the
For
in
instance,
the.
what do you do for a living?
I clean houses for a living.
Okay, so you're indoors.
I'm indoors,
Yeah.
but I'm an outdoorsy
Oh,
person,
so
and
you
I
like
lived on 5 acres over in Greenwood, and so I got it from out in the woods there, just being in the yard, and you know, I got it, and I got a tick bite, and it just didn't turn into a bullseye like they said, but it was just red and irritating, and it never healed. It took a good 2 years before that would actually stop being irritating because it was right on my waistline. And so clothing was uncomfortable to wear and irritated it more and just kept on, just redoing it. But I just never could test positive for what I thought was Lyme disease. I saw a guy on the news on a DC station from Virginia who got bit by this Lone Star tick, and they put it up there. And I have a North American wildlife book, and it's in that old book of mine that I've had for years, what the Lone Star tick looks like. And I'm like, oh my God, that's what that tick looked like, and that's how I recognized it. And then I started, like I said, I started thinking about it then more and putting two and two together and trying to figure it all out. It's basically a lot of research on your own, lots of research on your own, and then educating people that you would think would already know about it, but they don't. I was in my own yard, and I was having people over at a pool party, and we had hamburgers and hot dogs like most people do, and I had a couple of beers along with that. And that night I woke up with hot burning feet that just engulfed my whole body. I was just extremely like feeling like I had a chemical burn. And then itching started, and then huge whelps. I mean, I'm not talking like whelps like this. I'm talking half the size of my torso whelps, and half the size of my leg, and in different areas. And it lasts for about 3 or 4 days, and then I'd be totally wiped out for like almost a week after that. So it's just one of those reactions. It's a little different than theirs, and you know.
Did you go to the emergency room that night?
No, I just figured that I probably got something off the dog. And I've always been one that didn't believe that a rash should send you to the emergency room. Going to the grocery store is a very tedious ordeal. I try to go in the middle of the night when not a lot of people are there so I can read labels. You will have an education from just reading labels, and you don't even know how to pronounce these words, and you're trying to look up the definition. The other thing that's altered my life too is I think it's made me hyper allergic to food. So my food allergies are off the charts right now. So I'm very limited on what I can eat. Not only that, I think my allergy also developed into something like I thought was Lyme disease with the pain. I have a lot of joint pain where I literally some days don't get out of bed. I have to literally, and if I do get out of bed, I have days where I have to continually say right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, because my brain has to tell me what to do. It doesn't make any sense, but that's how I deal with it. A lot of times I'm very sore, and it's all over. And then there's some days that I'm just completely fine. And I can go for a few weeks, a couple days, a month, 2. And then all of a sudden I have a bout of this absolute muscle thing that I can't control. I had environmental allergies. I had dust, cat dander.
But nothing from eating food.
No food. I never even knew I had a food allergy other than when I was a child, I ate maple syrup and I was allergic to maple syrup.
It's probably also just the tree situation.
Yeah, I'm allergic to trees. Yes, I'm allergic to trees and grass, environmental stuff like that, but nothing as far as a real immense amount of food things until, like I discovered like 6 months ago. There's comfort in numbers. I wasn't losing my mind. I literally thought that I was losing my mind, especially with the muscle problem that I have sometimes. I really, truly thought that maybe I kept on searching for something else along with this, but I really do attribute it all to this because I think what makes mine a little different is because after I got bit by the tick, I also got tore up by chiggers. And I think that made my allergy go into some hyper mode, which changed my food allergies because I would break out eating all kinds of different things and not know why, and be totally eliminated the beef. So it's taken a long, long time to figure everything out. And then you think, okay, how bad is it going to be? And should I get ready to go to the emergency room, or should I be just relying on my EpiPen? So you do think about it, and you kind of choose your battles some days. In my case, I choose my battles by, whatever I'm allergic to, I have to stick to that one thing that day, and then the next day I deal with something else. Quinoa and tomatoes, potatoes. I can eat turkey, chicken, and spices. Pretty much, a lot of spices are pretty good. Starting to get into that area. I can eat fish, yes, I can eat fish. My main thing that I'd like to bring up is really not so much for awareness. I think they've covered that. Everybody needs to know that if you get bit by a tick, pretty much save it and then take off and go to the doctors if you feel like it's just starting to get a little bit too out of hand. Don't wait. But the main thing I'd like to bring up is with the CDC, I think things need to be more transparent on our ingredients to make it basically user-friendly in a way, in layman's terms, where we know what we're actually ingesting and putting in our mouths, putting on our bodies for shampoos or anything like that, because all that breaks down back down to mammal. And a lot of people are more sensitive to things than others. And, you never know what you're actually getting. And I think that the CDC should put together some guidelines to make it more transparent so that we know what we're actually eating. I think that because it's a continued study, they're not finished, and I think that that's why the CDC doesn't really respond that way to it and consider it a disease, because this is still a work in progress.